Hello, let's talk about Elizabeth Bishop's poem, One Art. It's a short poem, but the ending certainly takes it to a different level of import. Um, she starts off here by saying she lost her door keys. So, given the terms that I introduced earlier in the intro lecture um, or video, there's your poetic moment. Here's Elizabeth Bishop saying, I lost my car keys or my door keys, and it made me think about something. Somehow, I'm starting to connect something here, and something in my head or in my heart, wherever inside, is growing. I can sense a poem. Now, listen, I obviously don't know what Elizabeth Bishop, actually felt or thought as she wrote this, but that is how poetry works for poets that I know, and for me, and for others um, that have written about the origin of their poems. And there's a moment where you train yourself how to see things that appear to be ordinary, but actually carry a lot of connection with them, carry the potential to be the seed of a beautiful poem. Just losing the door keys. How many people have lost something like that? That irritation that happens, that minor irritation, and that can be it's almost a flip of the coin, right? You look a little harder and the key is under your car seat or something, and it's you know or you dropped it while you were trying to look through your wallet or your purse or your pocket, and there it is on the floor. Or it could take hours to find it, right? It's one of these. I don't know I don't know how to feel about this even, other than it's inconvenient and it's happening. Now just look how she moves through the concepts to, you know I've lost hours. I've lost places. I've lost names. I've lost my mother's watch. I've lost houses. I've lost cities. I've lost rivers and continents. So obviously, she's asking you to expand this experience to way beyond just a single person. And I'm not going to try to answer the question, right? What does it mean? But she says that she has lost continents, and that's not how this exercise is going to function here in terms of what we're trying to deliver with these videos and the lectures. Because what I want to do is say, can you sense the evocative power of that? Can you sense that she's introducing her reader to something that many of us might come up with slightly different answers to, but it's all forcing us to rethink the scale of this activity, perhaps the depth it can go, perhaps realizing that somehow life was designed to help you lose things. Think of how many things you've actually lost. Think how much more you're going to lose. And we see this all around us because we are in a community of people at different stages of their life, and the loss seems only to grow, as you continue on your earthly journey. So, what does it mean to lose a continent? Well, I don't know, other than the fact that she's asking you to remember that here's one person who said they've lost worlds, they've lost their place in space, and is this something that somehow can produce a feeling or an attitude in us, or a contemplation, the beginning of a contemplation that will help us imbue these experiences with meaning, right? All right. Um, some things here. Elizabeth Bishop is using poems, just excuse me, rhyme. Just look how the middle line of every stanza does rhyme rather closely. Intent. The middle line of every stanza: intent, spent, meant, went, continent, gesture, disaster. Now there it's evident, right? Um, that last line of the last stanza is really the wrap up of the whole poem. So um, anyway, now let's look at meter. All right. Well, before we do that, let's just finish up with rhyme. Um, the, the first and third line of every stanza here does seem to rhyme as well. At the beginning, it's master disaster. But look at the second stanza, right? The last line is fluster, and the last word is fluster, and the last word of that third line of the second stanza is master. That's not necessarily an exact rhyme, fluster, master. That's what we call a slant rhyme. It kind of rhymes. But let's look at the fourth stanza. It says, I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last oar, right? Last oar. And then look at the third stanza. The art of losing isn't hard to master. She's rhyming last or with master. And what I want to suggest to you here is that a strict and perfect rhyme very often hurts a poem. You don't have to do that with your poetry. If you, what you do need to do is find the right word. You need to understand what your poem is trying to do. Now, if you don't understand it at a distance because you have it thought out in your head, you'll begin. That's one way some people can do it, but other people begin to understand what the poem is doing as they write the poem. You don't. Sometimes it's this strange drafting process where the third, you let the poem kind of guide you where it's going as you write it, and then you realize, well, that's going somewhere that's not going to be very fruitful, and you come back and you revise and you change, but you might not be able to see it all in your head. But what is important for both such situations in terms of how you plan or write poetry is that you commit yourself to using the right word. And as you begin to understand the poem and what it can do, you might need to go back and revise those words because there are better words out there that align with the goal of the poem. But you do not make those choices because the words rhyme. If you do want rhyme, then it's a little more of a complicated situation, and you might have to eliminate the extent of the scaling or the reapplication or the goal of the poem because the rhyme is going to force you if you're into like making the words rhyme perfectly, that for whatever scheme you're on, that desire of yours, that commitment of yours is going to force you to let the poem take on directions and goals you might not want for it because those are the only words you can rhyme with it, and that's not necessarily a process that's going to produce the best poetry. The poem should do efficiently what it's trying to do. There are right words for it, and sometimes those right words don't sound alike, but your audience will forgive you if the poem touches them and doesn't rhyme perfectly, or maybe even doesn't rhyme a lot at all. Okay. Now, once you get those right words in place and you feel the power of the goal accomplished by the poem, maybe you can go back into there and work with some vowels or some middle words, or maybe there is a word or two where you can produce some sort of rhyme experience and not undercut the power of the poem. But I can't tell you how many times I've read works by emerging poets, beginning poetry writers, and they're too committed to rhyming. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to rhyme at all. You have to be very aware of how the word sounds, and how the mouth works as you read it aloud, or even how the mental mouth, I don't know else to say it, but how the sound that people have in their heads, they're not going to read your poetry aloud. The vast majority of people that read your poem are not going to read it aloud, although I think they should. But there is still a sound that happens in the head. It's not, like silent reading, but you need to know how combinations of letters can produce that. And part of just reading all this good stuff is going to help you get a sense of it, right? So we're not necessarily dealing with the science here. We're dealing with a little bit of a science, but much more of an art. And the best way to get a handle on the art is just to watch artists work and to have someone say to you, "This has been accepted as art. Let's ask ourselves why. Let's experience it. Now let's move on to 50 other pieces." And then as you make your way through those 50 pieces, you get a sense. You might not be able to articulate it. You might not be able to explain it perfectly. You can probably articulate it to some extent, but you're going to get a sense of the poetic moment, the sound of a poem, the mental sound of a poem, and the looseness that can be part of your toolkit. That can be it's something to really remember. And rhyme does not make a good poem. And many a good poem has no rhyme at all. Now there are some poems that have great rhyme and they're good poems, but I think at the beginning we should sort of knock down the notion that rhyme is paramount to poetry. And then the other concept that I had mentioned in my intro lecture, and let's talk about it here now, is meter, the way accents sound on the words. So I'm going to read the first stanza, and I'm going to read it artificially aloud, artificially accented, so you can hear the meter, right? The art of losing isn't hard to master. All right. The art of losing. Now, I had to do something there because someone might say, of losing. That sounds like three syllables. But in order for me to get it to sound, to produce that consistent um, sound pattern, I went the art of losing isn't hard to master. And that's not really very, sometimes people will say, well, I need to hear a da 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 da, or I need to hear a da 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 da. That's iamb or trochee, or sometimes an anapestic would be da 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 da, you know, or a dactylic would be a da 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 da. Okay, and every now and then you run across a good poem that's like that, fitting, and there are a lot of variations that can go with that, but what is much more important than getting good meter or like perfect meter is getting the words to work well together. You don't as we read this poetry, you are going to be tasked with reading them aloud at least once. You need to read everything at least twice, perhaps more than that, but at least twice. And you need to read everything at least once aloud of the two times, so that you can feel the way the sound is working, and you should be able to sense the fit. Think of in terms of jigsaw puzzles. Not every jigsaw puzzle is cut with exactly the same little squigglies and tongues and grooves. You can get some pretty bizarre cutting, but the point is, um, once you put that puzzle together right, everything fits, regardless of the way it was cut out. And what I'm saying is, the meter is a sort of cutting a part of the word so that we can think of the accentation, right? Accentuation, the accent, and and you don't have to be so strict about that either. Remember, modern poetry is loose here. Let me read a couple stanzas here. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent. Okay, did you pick up the meter there? No, but the line seemed to roll. So many things seem filled with the intent. I didn't go, so many things seem filled with the intent. Now, it actually seems to read that way, right? So, I mean, it could read that way if you wanted it to. So many things seem filled with the intent. But that is such an artificial reading, You'll get booed off the stage, or you should. You don't read poetry that way. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Now, I purposely put a big pause there because if I'm going to have a chance to read this aloud, I need to understand what I can do to make the power of the poem come out, right? Lose something every day, accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Now, let's look at the middle line of that stanza. Of lost door keys. I didn't go of lost door keys, of lost door keys. No, no, no. Let's not think in terms of meter. And if you look up meter online, you'll see what I'm saying. The feet, the iamb, the trochee, the dactyl, the anapestic, the dactylic, all of these things, you can be very strict about it. And you can gain this technical knowledge. And then you can go try to use it as a formula for writing poetry. And then you can tell people, hey, I wrote, look at the meter here, look at all of this. And in trying to get all of that right, you might take a very powerful concept and you might have to water it down because the words you're trying to get to work together aren't the right ones. And you're sacrificing the power of the poem just so you can have some sort of sense of meter on it. No, no. You do need to understand the way accents can help a line flow, the way pauses can help and if you're going to hear that in your head, how do you represent it with punctuation or with white space or whatnot? So I'm not saying the sound of the reading doesn't matter, but I am saying that strict rhyming and strict meter is not necessary for a good poem. Many times it has ruined, not ruined, but has made less powerful a poem that needs to be a little freer and looser. It is very powerful when it works right. And I'm not going to ever say that there's never a poem that has strong rhyme and strong meter and is super powerful. That is an exceptional piece of art. And and hopefully we all can write one or two of those in our lifetime. But there's so much more to a poem than its rhyme and its meter.